MAGA has become profoundly anti-reality voter base, not just by the left, not just by the international community, not just by the centrists, but even the own right-wing voter base that they have because of their very obsession and willingness to follow a leader even when he escalates international conflicts just because he refused to admit that he diddled with some kids in a specific island. And when your next MAGA candidate is already associated with tawdry personal scandal and grotesque narrative involving a widow after a politically charged killing linked to Charlie Kirk, the movement in itself only makes itself look more stupid, sleazy, and unserious even for the right-wing voter base. That's why the case that we bring you in proposition just simply proves that the moment the past investments becomes the very reason that you keep carrying a worse future strategy, not just for 2028 election, but for the overall run of the GOP, you are biting into a sunk cost in opposition. You stray away from the foundation of the grand old party, which is their very interest of keeping the conservative issues that still work while avoiding attachment that alienates centrist, independents, and suburban swing voters, especially when the recent polling shows that Trump-linked positions and Trump-owned economic standing are creating broader electoral imminence for the Republican Party at large. Before I move to my first issue, there's a precise reason why we have THBT, it is in the interest of X, and TH as X, motion diverse. This is precisely because they function differently. I think there's a lot of confusion within here in the debate, like, you should do this for the sake of your own strategy, or whether we should do this for the sake of your own value. In our side, we're simply forwarding a world that brings you the biggest value judgment here. That's why comparatively, if you look at your notes, obviously, out of tech, up is out of this debate. First issue then, is intra-conflict actually bad? Or is it just a painful process through which GOP cleans out dead political weight? This is me weighing on their best case because they haven't shown why Trump literally has an incentive to backlash the right-wing voter base, for example. We told you that this is a very short-sighted insight from UP, and this is the very reason why they're going to lose. Because they said that intra-conflict will happen inside the Republican Party. They want you to believe that preserving unity is inherently good. We say that that kind of unity is worthless if that unity around if that unity in itself is currently shrinking. Right now, it is currently electorally costly identity, and so the conflict is actually useful if it really happened because it cleans out the party of that, or the parts of the party that keeps trapping it within Trump's shadow. Just like Trump, opposition is delusional to think that Trump is still popular, even for the very own MAGA voter base that they have. Empirically, this is not true. That's why you can see a lot of resentment even from their own MAGA voter base that hates Trump right now. Actually, last night in AP poll, Trump's approval rate reached 33% overall. Recently, 30% in his handling of economy, 23% of his handling of costly living. So this just shows that even in the most important areas that people care about, like literally war, econ, and daily expenses, his approval rate is even lower than the overall rating because he's especially weak on issues that usually decide election. That means opposition cannot fly an assertion here that people actually love his policy even now. So this is why we told you that on the comparative, you need to stray away from these issues in the first place in order for you to fix that. Assume at the best case for opposition that a Republican still wins the national election. Even then, they are forced to defend a set of stupid policies that many Republicans themselves do not actually like, simply because those policies remain tied to Trumpist identity on their side, and all of those policies are failing right now within the status quo. So the problem is not just whether they can still win at once, but that victory comes with the cost of inheriting and legitimizing positions that weaken the party from within their interests. But then they cater their analysis towards MAGA. Problem, I think MAGA is just a faction within American right, and not entirely the American right in itself. It means that opposition cannot just simply say distancing from Trump means abandoning the right, because the GOP can shed MAGA as its dominantly identity while remaining a right-wing party. So the burden becomes much easier in our side. We only need to prove that Trumpism is electorally and institutionally costly for them, not that conservatism in itself. Like literally, we had Republican party that has existed for 2 centuries now. That's like 3 to 4 Trumps. They already survived with George Bush. Trump is not the uniting factor, and to protect his identity does not have. You cannot create any incentive for Republican Party in itself. But before I move, sure, POI.
Even if Trump goes unpopular, he has the money, he has the resources, he has the pull, he has a literal fucking social media. Why the fuck will I go ahead and distance myself?
Okay, this is the fucking answer to that question. The answer to that is simple. Trump is not the only right-wing rich politician in your side. Literally, you had a lot of baggage back then, even when Trump hasn't existed yet within your party. Literally, even if you blanch that out, you take away all of the harms that we have mentioned in the first place. So what is more damaging? One period of internal rupture that might happen, or years of continued dependence on a figure whose baggage keeps narrowing its coalition? We told you that even if they lose in short term in the next 2028 election, there is still a more rational trade-off, because a contained electoral loss is far less costly than preserving a political identity that keeps shrinking their future coalition. A party can recover from one defeat. It is much harder to recover from years of structural dependence on a figure whose baggage outlives his electoral usefulness. So in your side, you're just going to run on a sunk cost policy, and that proves our case even more, because you're going to rely on Trump. That is so bad. So even on loss, detaching from Trump is still worth it, because the trade on one cycle of pain is far better than the long-term pain that we have told you. And secondly, they still haven't answered the succession problem on their side. The next MAGA figure in line is J.D. Vance. That is precisely the problem. He does not command an independently real social base. He does not have Trump's charisma. He does not have the same myth of invincibility that makes Trump uniquely sticky to that electorate in the first place. What they inherit, therefore, is not Trump's strength in full, but merely the obligation to imitate him without the personal authority that made that imitation work in the first place. So even if you get all of those budgets from Trump, by the way, Trump is not even a billionaire. Worse, even Trump himself, even if you get those budgets from Trump, you're not going to really have that structural change, even if you win. At worst, you're going to live a much more harder life, because you cannot preserve your conservative ideology if you bank on that strategy. Worse, even Trump himself, just like what Joseph told you, has repeatedly shown that loyalty inside MAGA is unstable and humiliating, because he is perfectly willing to undercut, embarrass, or discard his own supposed hairs whenever it suits him. So what are you going to do as a party if you rely on him in this specific glance? I don't think that's going to be strategic. I don't think that gives you an independence in the long run. Like, literally, if you're just going to rely on Trump from time to time, what if he suddenly dies? He's old. Literally, you don't have any strat and you don't have any case.